Good evening, everyone. This is Jay Simmons, President and founder of Mach, and I want to welcome you to the Sprint 3 of 2015 Sprint Review. I have Chris Sigmund, who is acting as our Scrum Master in all things Agile this year, and then myself and Jeremy Wright were also working on this sprint, as was Aaron. However, he can't join us this evening. I'm going to let Chris take over in his role as a facilitator of all things Sprint and Scrum and Agile. Go for it.
Okay, so we took on a number of things for the sprint, and I'm just basically going to go down the list, and we're going to talk with the primary POC for those and kind of do a judgment about done versus not done. So Jeremy, you're at the top of the list. You had CAD query 02. There being a bug in polyline handling in CAD query preventing the model of junctions between chamber and the nozzle for Yavin.
Only Jeremy just fell off the hangout.
Oh. And there's Jeremy.
Maybe.
Somebody can... Well, while we're waiting for Jeremy, I believe this one was done. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Have you seen it in action?
I actually never actually saw the bug in question. It was a very deep CAD query bug, was my understanding, and was mostly being handled really over on the CAD query side of things, but as our contribution to it.
Okay, so I guess just moving on for now, the next item was just making sure ODE is updated with the latest meeting minutes and things like that. Do you mind showing that off today?
Yeah, this is for this is the Yavin version that we had two like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so absolutely. So Aaron and I worked together on this. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's fuzzy, but there we go.
Okay. So my take on this, both as as partial product owner and partial implementer, was that we were doing a lot of advertising of both projects being talked about on the blog. We were talking about it on the blog. We had done a presentation over on Hardware Summit, and I wanted to make sure that when people came to the project that they could follow along with where we were at. We kind of got behind. So that meant the landing page for both projects. So in Yavin, this is the the overview page on Open Design Engine. We've got a real welcome text here, a nice image to reference, and then more welcome text that goes into describing more of what's going on and directs people to come to the forums to start chatting to us. I think within the confines of what Open Design Engine currently supports on a project landing page, that's decent and better than some of the stuff that has happened. Moving over to the wiki landing page echoes some of that content and then goes into a little more detail down here, referencing the key pieces of stuff that we've done in terms of the design process, including addressing the initial questions and the export review, and a pretty significant resources page and our meeting minutes and notes. And if I just go through those pages, the initial questions did not need updating. We did good work on those originally. The export control review was also a previous PBI that was well done, so I didn't need to update that. Aaron went through, God bless his soul, for doing some real muck work and went through and made sure that every one of our meeting minutes that are in Google Plus got switched to published mode, and then linked them all appropriately through the entire process. And then I updated the resource links. I've been trying to keep some of these up to date for a while in the 3D printing land. But I actually, after my visit to the Portland State Aerospace Society, got a whole lot of good information about their cold gas thruster, where they shared some stuff with me in person and then pointing me where links were. So I went through and I actually separated out this stuff a little more and made a real propulsion section and have this whole sub area all about PSAS. And then as part of the work on the presentation for the Open Hardware Summit, I needed a block diagram for a cold gas thruster that was openly licensed. So I went through and made one, and then I linked that in here as well. But I'm not sure I didn't share that correctly for you guys to see that, so I apologize. But if you click that link, you get a block diagram. So there you go. I'm claiming done on that one.
Yeah, I think that one's thoroughly done. So the next one was creating unit tests for the pressure vessel class and integrating them into MTK so that we can easily display and report on the results of the tests. So that one, pressure vessel class are done. The integration into the MTK document is not done yet. It appears that there's at least one bug, possibly several, with how that class is defined, which makes it work just fine in the pressure vessel unit tests, but not anywhere else.
Gotcha. So we will not
unit test my unit test now.
Unit test needs unit testing. It's inception for Python.
So that one is not done. Next was basically the same thing as the ODE pages, but for MTK. Jay, if you can just blow through that real quick, considering that a lot of it's the same.
Yeah, so I'll switch projects now to MTK. Oopsie, I'll do that correctly. Sorry about that. I'll actually, put that in correctly. All right, so the landing page for the project. This was actually really, really thin before. I went and updated this language considerably based on feedback from the group after I did some brainstorming work on the forums, and based on stuff that we've been talking about when I went to do things like talk to the Portland State Aerospace Society and present at Open Hardware Summit. Just to be silly, just to talk real quick, I changed how this icon renders so that it shows up on the main ODE landing page as well. So when we've got the latest projects, MTK is still a one that shows up, so we get to have both the logo and some introductory text about the project on the Open Design Engine main page. I actually spent some time to make that happen, so I'm going to show it off. If we go to the wiki, this was also a fairly extensive rebuild. And again, based in part on what the main project landing page does, I pulled an image out of the presentation I put together. This is a mock-up. This is not real. Folks that are in the project know that this is the kind of direction I'd like to see us go, where an IDE like Spider would embed IPython/Jupyter notebooks, and one could, in that environment, do just the notebook, just the source code, or in this kind of view, split both to work back and forth. But this is clearly still mock-up. There are actually PBIs to move us in this direction. If I also updated the setup instructions because they were woefully old and referenced the old Sage implementation. And now, right now, you can just set it up on Linux instead of multiple environments, but you do that just by running the install script. And I basically documented what I've been doing when I'm doing updates. And I checked it with Aaron, and he and I both believe that this is an accurate set of instructions. That's a reference to another website, the Pint raw stuff from Pint. I did some significant updates on the overview page, again, based on a combination of brainstorming work and work with feedback from previous meetings. In particular, I highlighted the art ground rules, but instead of talking about them being open source principles, I more referenced them as documentation principles, because everyone's supposed to be doing documentation. I also added a user story that I called a ConOps because I'm a systems engineer. And everyone here's seen that. I just documented it in the wiki instead of where it was in other places. Meeting minutes is the same content from Aaron. He also, kudos to him that after he got this set up, he's taken it on to make sure this stays up to date. So he's been going in after every meeting and fixing these, making sure that latest stuff's there. And then I did a pretty big scrub on the resources because it used to be very Sage-centric, and now I've made it very Jupyter and IPython-centric since we've committed to go down that path. And there you go. That's all those changes.
Okay. The last item that we had on the sprint was to create unit tests, develop the geometry of our Hello World chamber, and Jeremy was working on that. Jeremy, do you want to talk a little bit about where you are with that real quick?
Yeah, if I can find the right window here, I will share my screen. So can you guys see this, the chamber?
Yes.
Okay. So this is rendered inside of the CAD query module for FreeCAD, but this is kind of like represents what the unit tests would be looking at. I ran into a few issues where the way we had done geometry for our kind of first iteration of the Hello World chamber kind of causes problems for the dimensions that we have in our unit test data that we're feeding into the math and CAD test. So I had some trouble with that, and I think Jay and I have talked a little bit about changing the geometry just before this hangout. So there's probably going to be some rework that has to go on so that we can get to the point where we can reliably run and create these unit tests around the geometry. So that's an item that we're not going to count as done, but it's very close. We just have to figure a few things out. All of the infrastructure and the boilerplate is there. It's just a matter of fixing a few things and then implementing the tests.
Okay. The other one, we skipped it earlier while you were dealing with technical difficulties, was the polyline bug in CAD query.
Yes, that has been fixed, and it has been pulled into CAD query's code base, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's been proven out, and what that was is it was going to create an issue when we went to do more complex geometry than just the chamber itself. So I wanted to go ahead and fix that before it became a problem. And that actually solved problems for a few other people too, a few other CAD query community members, so that worked out pretty well.
Cool. Okay. And that's it as far as the things that we had planned on doing for the sprint. In review, 3 of the 5 items were done. The done items were the just mentioned polyline handling bug and CAD query, updating documentation in ODE for Yavin, as well as doing the same for MTK. As for the 2 items that weren't finished, we had the unit test for our pressure vessel and having them show up in a document in MTK. As previously mentioned, there's a bit of a blocker right now with how the class that holds the data is set up. That's causing some issues. And then the other ticket that isn't done yet is that geometry validation. And there's some things that we're talking about adding so that we can properly handle that. And that's it.
Yep. So I just want to comment on a couple of things real quick. One, I think the team did a really good job. We were running at the beginning of the sprint a little light-handed. Not everyone was available to work this sprint, the whole sprint. So I want to commend the team on getting as much done as we got done. The CAD unit tests were a late addition because we got Jeremy back on the team, and I also think that part of that is a matter of we only got half a sprint to work on that, and we were running tech debt with the geometry itself. That geometry was it was a quick and dirty sketch, I think is a fair way of saying it, wouldn't you say, Jeremy? We put that together in a couple of nights just to have something to test the pressure vessel calcs with, right?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, we didn't go through all the motions on that.
So that we ran into some tech debt that made it not possible to wrap up the unit test for that. We maybe could have predicted that and said, why don't we pull back a little bit on that PBI, but that's okay. I'm very happy that we're as close as we are. And the other one that we didn't get done, I think, is as much about us still learning all the Jupyter stuff and the IPython stuff. And so I think that it's, I still think we should be commended. I think the team deserves recognition for how far that it got, because I mean, there was quite a bit of team effort there. Chris ran into a number of blockers, and folks came together to help him try to work through as many as we could, but we just ran out of time, and just didn't yet have all the expertise in architecture figured out around that. So that one was also probably a little bit more bigger than we thought it would.
Well, I think if you look at how we're positioned now for the next sprint, we're in really good shape. I mean, we've got all this stuff that's kind of knit together now. We just don't have all the kinks worked out of everything. So I think we're positioned well.
I'm very, very happy. That's a perfect way of putting it, Jeremy. I'm very, very excited about the work we've gotten done. That will basically constitute the bulk of the work for 2015. We're coming up on the holiday season. Mach 30 goes into a little bit of a hibernation during the holiday season. Again, thanks to everyone that works at Mach 30, but in the engineering community, a big round of thanks from the leadership, and we'll pick this up hardcore again in January. Thank you very much. And with that, I will sign off on the review. Good night.